Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories, where people conform to the letter but not the spirit of a request. Thank you for subscribing to the channel and for hitting the like button. Today we have 4 great stories. If you enjoy them and haven't already, why don't you make this the video that you subscribe to the channel? And with that out of the way, let's begin, shall we? The first story is called Manager Gets Problems with HR. I was working for a decently sized construction company in the UK when I was about 18. It was my first real job since leaving school. The pay wasn't great to be honest, but I was all in on doing my best. The company made a habit of not paying overtime. In fact, it was a no overtime company. You work 9 to 5 and that's it. This was clear in the contract. My boss at the time must have not had much of a personal life, as he was the guy that sends email at 1 in the night, etc. He used to call out of hours all the time on our mobiles, and if I was available, I'd answer. No big shakes there. I'll help if I could. The calls were often completely nonsensical, such as tomorrow I need you to do this and that. Everything was urgent. In reality, all of these calls could have waited until the morning. After a few weeks of ignoring the calls, I got dragged in to see him. The conversation was pretty much one way and went, "You're being paid enough to monitor your phone at all times. It could be an emergency. I don't think you're committed. I can find someone else who is, etc." This is where I thought, screw it. I'd turn up to work in the daytime and purposely not off in meetings. I'd also try my best to look distant. The inevitable happened and HR called me in to see if I was okay. I explained that I had not been sleeping, maybe 2 to 3 hours a night, as I was monitoring the phone for calls from the boss. They asked why I just didn't turn the ringer really high or put it on vibrate. So I explained I was a very heavy sleeper and had missed the phone on a few occasions, causing the boss to warn me. This stopped immediately, and non-working hours were off limits to casual calls and generic emails. I still work there now, and I'm quite high up in the business. And I still get reminded on occasions that we work that way because I was falling asleep in meetings. Not proud, but at least we all enjoy a good work-life balance and still perform as a business to the same standard. I think I might have thrown him under the bus a bit, but I did try to discuss it, and it was very much his way or nothing. The next story is called Who Said This? I worked at a grocery store a year or so back. I've been working there 2 years total. I was trained in more positions than most and probably could have been a manager if they didn't already have them all. Now, at the time, I started dating a girl from the deli, still happily dating her, and we would talk during our breaks in the break room. Now, one day, I'm in my department. For reference, despite working full-time hours, I was paid part-time. There was at least one open full-time position, and I had already been trained for 2 or 3 other departments. I was cleaning, and the top manager comes in. He immediately says, "I just want you to know you shouldn't listen to your girlfriend all the time." I'm pretty stunned because why not? So I asked why, and he goes, "Well, we have some staff who overheard her tell you not to work as hard." Well, that was news to me. We both worked extremely hard. I picked up plenty of shifts to help and often help other departments because I finished cleaning up and meet early. She was the only person willing to sort out the mess that was the primary freezer. So I essentially told him, "You know how I act around work. It's pretty obvious I hadn't listened to that." But still, who said this? Because I want to make sure they heard it right, as my girlfriend hasn't said any such thing. He says he can't tell me because of privacy reasons, but he'll look into it. 2 weeks or so later, my girlfriend had quit. She didn't like the treatment, and I was also considering quitting. Then my manager comes in to tell me he looked into it. So he did not actually look into it initially, because he asked the co-workers, and they said, "No, he said it." I am obviously a little angry and say, "Well, obviously I haven't said that, or I'd be slacking off right now." Then he decides that this is a good time to offer me a full-time job in the meat department. I pretty much said, "Oh no, it's okay, I'm planning on switching jobs anyway." I knew exactly what they were talking about. One of my friends who worked there in grocery had said, "Minimum pay for minimum labor." I laughed at that. That was the whole extent of me and the phrase that got both me and my girlfriend to quit. 2 weeks later, I'm no longer there, enjoy a month off of work entirely, then switch to my current job, which I love. The third story is called A Useless Meeting Made Even More Useless. My company is undergoing some changes and having to work with another entity on some things to supposedly make the work easier. It won't, but the higher up in my company say it will. Next week, the first part of it begins. It's been extremely arduous because the other entity has been less than helpful and, well, lazy. Thankfully, my coworkers did a lot of the hefty living, so to speak, and things will go smoothly. Anyway, this past week things have progressed well, until Friday. Now all of a sudden we need to log in over the weekend to review things. People involved in this are literally across the country, East Coast, Midwest and West Coast. Many of us have plans for the weekend, like me and a couple of my coworkers. No way can we log in, but we are told we must. Stuff must be further discussed. At the very least, and this was key, we need to call in to participate. No one was happy, as there's absolutely no need for it. There's nothing more that needs to be done or discussed. We all say so numerous times, but finally agree to call reluctantly. Cue malicious compliance. I and another coworker had plans to attend a sporting event that Saturday. Another coworker had to go to a wedding, and yet another had an anniversary party to go to. All of our plans were at about the same time of the meeting, albeit in different time zones. We all call into the Zoom meeting as requested. None of us muted our phones. We all planned it that way. For the next 15 minutes or so, no one could hear anything. Crowd noise, wedding, it was right after the vows and people were outside cheering at that point apparently. 2 kids jammering in the car, with the car radio playing as well. All the background noise was overwhelming. We are being asked to mute so they could do the meeting, but we all ignored it. Meeting ended and that was that. A useless meeting made even more useless. I should point out my supervisor was among the group not on mute, and we got their blessing to do this as they also joined in on the malicious compliance. Got a text this morning from my supervisor and was told there were no issues, as we all expected. Turns out that meeting wasn't needed after all. But hey, we at least got an hour of overtime, approved by my supervisor for just a phone call where no one could hear a thing. The last story is called It Is Settled. Back in the early 2000s, I worked at UPS loading trucks. I'd been there for over a year, was well known throughout the building for picking up shifts and being a good worker, and had gained a bit of seniority in the union. Our normal shift was 5 hours, with anything over 25 hours a week being overtime. So I tried to pick up as many extra shifts as I could. Anyone working in a union shop knows a lot once on union seniority, and picking up extra shifts at UPS was the same way. Most seniority got first pick, and it went down the line until the shifts were filled. Early on I made a reputation of working very hard, so some of the shift soups would delay asking for a fill-in until some of the senior guys left. As could be expected, this upset a couple of people when they got passed over, and I got some FaceTime with the union reps on every shift. Ultimately though, this just led to me becoming friends with the reps and doesn't have any bearing on the story until later. So as I mentioned, I had a reputation through a lot of the soups of working very hard and always being available. That said, my normal shift soup hated me for some reason. I think it was because he was an old retired military vet and I was a punk 18 years old with hair down to my shoulders. I didn't give a thought about impressing him in any way, except through loading trucks. With us butting heads, I brought up a couple of issues with my union rep friends, but nothing was ever serious enough to push the issue. That is, until I got sick. I wasn't getting out of bed for anything, if I could help it, so I called in. UPS policy at the time was as long as you let the soup know something like an hour or more before a shift, it wasn't considered a no-call, no-show. I called right at the hour mark, and my soup told me if I didn't come in, I was going to be written up for a no-call. Malicious compliance time. I rolled up to the warehouse looking like death. I decided to load up on fluids on the way in preparation for loading trucks after a day of non-stop sickness. We had to go through security and metal detectors before a half-mile walk to the building, then another quarter mile or so to my load once inside. Those fluids started coming up just through security. I also had to stop in the building on the way to my load. At my load, my soup started going over pre-shift things while I'm standing towards the back next to a trash can. Those that hadn't been near me on the walk-in had already heard about my compliance. So I had a nice ring of free space around me when I started delivering into the trash can and over the surrounding area. Immediately, my soup shut down the meeting, told everyone to go to work, then asked me what the heck I was doing there in that condition. I don't know, soup. It may have had something to do with you telling me I'd be written up if I didn't come in. I got sent home. But the story doesn't end here. The idiot decided to still write me up for a no-call, no-show. I what the hecked him when he handed me the write-up, and he said to take it up with the union if I had a problem. Okay, ding ding, round 2. Remember those union rep friends that I'd made from picking up shifts and working hard? Yep, I went in search of one and had a chat. He had already heard about my ordeal. A mile worth of warehouse space, and word still traveled faster than it would have if we shared a cubicle. He knew I had been in the warehouse puking, and if I was there, how could I have not shown up? And if my soup was the one that sent me home after I showed up, how could the write-up be my fault at all? So he roped in HR. HR was involved in all the official write-ups and hadn't heard the story, but was aware of the write-up. So the union rep and I told her the story. She called down and asked the soup to come over to her office. He came and recounted the same story. When asked if I'd called, he said yes. If asked if I'd still showed, he said yes. When asked if he sent me home, he reiterated that he had. When asked how I could be a no-call no-show when I'd called, showed and been sent home, he didn't have an answer. I was dismissed to go back to work. He was not. Unfortunately, I don't have details on what exactly happened with him. My union rep buddy did say that I wasn't the only one that had been passing along issues for a while, but this was the first time they could really do anything about it. Being management, the soup wasn't part of the union, and the union rep wouldn't say much else other than it was settled. When a union rep tells you it's settled and they can say more, my experience has been that they are absolutely right. The soup kept his distance and didn't speak much to me afterward outside of what was absolutely necessary. And now it's your time to shine. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories? I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.